Tom Thayer joins Waddle and Silvy right now on the CarX Tire and Auto Hotline. What's going on, Tom?
Man, how you guys doing? Good to talk to you.
We're just ramping up for the regular season, so that's what we're doing. I don't know what you're doing, Tom.
Yeah, listen, man, I'm waiting for pads. I can't sit here and tell you that I'm excited about what. I mean, listen, I am excited about what I've seen and who's participating, but really, if you want to evaluate football until you have pads and you have a collision that dictates the end of the play, and all the, that type of stuff that, is tremendously important additives to the development of a football team, we'll probably able to answer more questions. But the energy, the effort, just the guys that are newly aboard the Bears and what they've been able to contribute so far, it's going to be exciting to see. So I'm not underwhelmed. I'm just waiting to be overwhelmed when the pads come on.
I knew you would say that, but knowing that the tempo, even when they were in shorts last year, wasn't up to snuff. Yurko didn't like it. I know, like, we had many conversations about it. Are they practicing with a better tempo?
Yeah, they are, because there's a better understanding of the defense. There's a better talent on the defense. It's not TJ Edwards and Tremaine Edmonds are trying to learn their defensive calls and responsibilities and how to get everybody lined up. They know where all the pieces need to be in place. And on the back end of it, Kevin Byard is really the only guy that's kind of learning some new information in all of his years of experience. You have a guy from Montez Sweat from the beginning of time of a new football season can spill over to guys like Javon Dexter. And so, that is exciting. And then kind of you see the evolution of Caleb Williams. He has a good understanding of football. He's got, really good arm talent. He's got good eye talent. He understands what he's seeing. He can run a fast-paced offense, and there are a lot of encouraging signs there. But the reality of football is when you do have full pads, time and speed and area condenses because the guys are bigger. There's a lot more hand fighting that a guy may win instantly. You don't have the guys winning or getting into a stalemate in a non-padded scenario, and then they just stop. So, like I said, it's encouraging, but there's a lot more exciting things, hopefully, in the future.
Tom, how confident are you that Nate Davis and Tevin Jenkins will be, first and foremost, available more times than not this year, and their development, in your opinion?
T. Waddle, it's the first thing I look at practice. I look for number 64. That's the number of Nate Davis, and make sure he's there and he's carrying a helmet and he has the equipment of the day on. And because the reality of it is I'm not picking on Nate, but the reality of it is when you're bringing a new center aboard, you have a new quarterback. The importance of those guys and their day-to-day on-site operations is so important to the overall development of the offensive line, because Darnell Wright is still a young guy. Braxton Jones is a young guy, although he has experience. Larry Borum has been filling in at the left tackle when they're, divide the reps between he and Braxton Jones. But when you talk about the importance of the overall development of 5 offensive linemen together because of the tackles, because of the new center, the 2 experienced offensive guards are, key cogs in the overall operation.
Are you comfortable with how they're handling the center position?
I am. I just think it's something that's going to work itself out. I don't think that you're going to go out there and you're going to make a decision just because you like one guy's personality more than the other. When you have a chance to evaluate these guys in one-on-ones, and then 9-on-7, which is just a run-oriented drill, but there's a little bit more physicalness to that drill. And then their performance and the amount of reps that they'll get throughout preseason games. I do think cream will rise to the top, and one of these guys will win the job, but there's going to be 2 guys that are pretty good football players that, will provide a good 1-2 punch throughout the season in case something happens.
Who is the pressure most on up front, Tom? Is it Braxton Jones because he's playing for a contract and he plays left tackle, and if he doesn't play into the position this year, then they have a void there and they have to find one?
I think Braxton and Tevin are kind of in the same boat. They're both looking at new contracts. There's conversation about new contracts. You got to make sure that you're a reliable guy if you're going to start talking about contracts. And then you look at the numbers that some of these guys have been getting around the league. I mean, they are making a lot of money. So don't sit there and start talking about a contract if you're only around for 14 or 12 games a year. That kind of, I need a replacement, not a reward. And Braxton has always been a solid guy. And if he continues to develop strength in the weight room, he's super intelligent, he's reliable, he's durable. And if he can stay on the field and continue to develop at the expected rate of him, he may be in line for that next contract because he's earned it, not because they're just gonna, just giving it to him.
Tom, I know you've said all along that you would like for camp to be more physical. I believe they're going to have, 3 or 4 padded practices before you get to the Hall of Fame game. Now, do you believe that a guy, and it's not going to be their starters, but a guy that's going to be asked to play 30 to 35 snaps is going to be in football shape after 3 or 4 days of padded practice to go out there and play?
No, I really don't, only because of my own experiences. I'm not saying that I disagree with the way they're going about their business, but we had 3 padded practices in 1.5 days, back in the day.
Yeah.
So, listen, T. Waddle, I need 3 days of training camp to get comfortable in my equipment.
Right.
When you're in a 3-point stance as an offensive lineman and you're not wearing any equipment, it's easy to get in the stance and get out of your stance and run around and look like a semi-athlete. But all of a sudden, when you get in a stance and your shoulder pads are hitting your helmet, and now your face mask is butting up against your shoulder pads as well, and there's your thigh pads are feeling different when you get into your stance. It to me, it always took a period of time before I became comfortable in my equipment. And so to think that these guys having 3 padded practices and then they go out there and they put their livelihood on the line, I don't know how prepared you can feel. But maybe that's a good challenge to some of these young guys. If Austin Booker comes here and he's got a certain skill level that you really think that is developable, if he goes out there and shines on a Hall of Fame evening or into the preseason games, and all of a sudden he starts getting extra reps and he gets a little bit more reps into the rotation of importance. But, there's going to be a lot of guys out there that should really cherish the opportunity to play in the preseason Hall of Fame game, because you're just not offered that opportunity very much. And if you're a guy that's on the fringe, that you're a guy that's, you're starting to open the eyes a little bit of some of these coaches in no pads, see if you can keep their eyes open in pads.
Meatball or not a meatball take from my perspective, or you judge whether or not I'm being a meatball here. I've made the statement that I believe it would be beneficial for Caleb Williams to play next Thursday, not to keep him out there, maybe not even to throw a pass, but he's coming from an offense at USC, Tom, where he never huddled. They never were, the cadence wasn't an issue. They were never calling plays, getting in and out of huddles, just from a procedural standpoint. Do you believe it would be beneficial for Caleb to be out there next Thursday night for a series or two?
100%, because it's not a crowd that's going to be that distracting. It's not going to be noise that is so interruptive that he can't go out and communicate in the huddle and then at the line of scrimmage. And like you said, if he went out there and had 10 plays, throw a couple of screens, give some handoffs, see if there is a third down and distance that you'd like to get him a downfield opportunity, I would. And I think that T. Waddle, throughout my entire time in the NFL, I've never walked into a preseason locker room thinking I wasn't going to play. So I don't know what that would be like. But when you talk about a young quarterback that can use every positive experience that can be afforded to him before that Tennessee game, I'm with you 100%. I could give him a handful of reps for sure.
Tom Thayer joining us. It's Waddle and Silvy on ESPN 1000. Where do you believe he is right now, Tom? You talked a little about him. Where do you believe Caleb Williams is now, and where do you believe he will be by the end of the year?
Wow, by the end of the year, he's got to become familiar with he's got to be comfortable with the terminology. He's got to be able to listen to the terminology that he says in the huddle and understand every time he's calling two plays. And then when he goes to the line of scrimmage and he looks at the lineup of the defensive personnel, he knows that he has to make a change of the second play he called, or the first one he called is what we're going to go with. And, even now in the early stages of training camp, you can see Caleb looking at Shane Waldron and giving that rotation of his hands like, hey, let's get the play in. And to me, that's a positive, because every extra second that you can give a quarterback that can look at the personnel across the line of scrimmage for him, or start digesting the information that's in his helmet and how it pertains to the next down and distance, the personnel grouping and the play call, I think it's been super encouraging. So I haven't walked out of a practice and going, wow, I mean, is he really the guy? Is he a guy that can succeed at this level? So at the beginning, I wanted him to be confident in the plays that Shane Waldron is getting him ready to run. And at the end of the season, I want him to be able to go out in a hostile environment, in whether they have nonverbal cadence or they have the luxury of having a verbal cadence, be able to run the system efficiently.
Do you believe, though, like in layman's terms, by the end of the year, Caleb Williams, that we will know that the Bears have one of their best quarterbacks in the history of their team?
I think that you're going to have enough indications to make sure to understand if you're on the right track. I do. We all have high expectations for a guy that's been drafted this high. And so with the supporting cast that he has, the weapons he has at his disposal, the way that he should be able to distribute the ball, I do think that you're going to get a solid indicator of what you have going into the future. And still, I do think that to master a system and, of making sure that you have the same terminology for a period of time, it's a 2.5 to 3 year process to know every single piece of language that you're saying and how it fits according to every down and distance and according to every defensive grouping of personnel that you're seeing.
Tom, do they have enough assets on the defensive line? And do you think that's a spot where they will either trade for somebody or sign somebody before the ball's in the air for the opener?
Well, that's a great, that's the question of the year. That's the question of camp. Do they have guys like Javon Dexter and Zach Pickens and DeMarcus Walker and Austin Booker? If all of a sudden they come and they rise to the top, if a guy like Dominique Robinson can convert athleticism and speed into a solid arsenal of pass rushers, maybe they do have the right group. But to me, I think that you need three solid defensive ends of concern for whatever offensive line you're playing against. Because if it's only Montez Sweat, you're going to see every directed protection in his sliding towards him. Now, are you going to have to try to be creative and take a 6'6" Javon Dexter and rush him from the defensive end position instead of a defensive tackle position to see if he can, the length that he's blessed with, see if that he can convert that into an outside rusher? I think there's some experiments you have to go through, but I do think if there is personnel out there that Ryan Poles can go out and make a deal and bring in an extra pass rusher to assist these guys, I would consider doing it.
We played a lot of the Ryan Poles conversation that Joniak had on your guys' podcast, and I heard your reaction to it afterwards about their chemistry that they have together. Anything stick out to you in the conversation that Joniak had with Poles?
The thing about I like about Ryan, he doesn't need any prep. He's the type of guy that can go and sit there and have a football conversation with anybody in the football landscape, from Joniak to you guys, and be able to talk football intelligently. And so I that's what I respect about him. He's not a guy that needs these prepared answers or prepared questions so he knows exactly what he's saying. He sits out there every single day and he studies football, and he studies every personnel grouping. And so what I've got to know now, out of Ryan Poles so far, I really like and respect out of him. But I guess we'll see how the offense and defensive line come together, and I think that will be one of the telltale signs of what's going to happen this year.
On a personal note, Tom, were you smart enough to have it worked into your contract to call an 18th game going forward?
No, but I've been saying for years that I think that it was always on the way to an 18-game season. And when I played in the USFL, we played 18 games a year. We did not have preseason games. We had a couple of inter-squad mixed scrimmages against different opponents, but I'm a big believer in 18 games and no preseason games.
I'm trying to call up the.
And by the way, that would mean, would it not? It's not just adding 1 week. It would be adding 2 weeks, because an 18th game would bring with it, I'm assuming, an extra bye week, which would allow 2 more weeks of television revenue instead of 1.
Yeah, we did it without any bye weeks. So it's just the difference in time. But again, with these teams, so you got Cincinnati that comes in for a week, and at the end they have a kind of an inter-squad scrimmage that is, the reward for season ticket holders, or, still different ways that you can profile these guys.
Florio wrote this in Pro Football Talk. I don't know if you caught this at the end of his article, and I don't know if he was just trying to be clever or if he's being literal here. But this, because I heard Carmen and Yurko talk about this, how okay, once they get to 18, that's it. But this is what Florio wrote. And Waddle, I don't know if you caught this.
I did, yeah.
He said, the current CBA runs through 2030. Nothing prevents the two sides from coming to a new agreement on any topic at any time. And it's just a matter of time before the NFL and NFLPA agree to 18 games. Then 19, eventually 20. Do you believe that was his clever way of ending it? Or do you believe that many believe
that they'll go to the USFL partial?
That there eventually will be a 20-game season.
I don't think there will be a 20-game regular season, because when you have the 18 games and then you have playoffs, I think they're looking for the length of year that they can occupy, not necessarily 2 more games on the docket. I think it's just that, okay, we have 18 games, we're occupying a big part of the calendar, and then, okay, let's get into the playoffs and then occupy that portion of the calendar as well.
I thought the other interesting part was at the very beginning of Florio's article, where he said that this whole run to 18 games could possibly be an expedited exercise because of the lingering lawsuit, where each team could potentially be on the hook for $450 million. So the sooner you get more television money into the coffers, the better it is for the owners.
You're right. The NFLPA executive director, Lloyd Howell, he has mentioned that they have already had high-level talks, at least on the surface, about that 18th game, even though the collective bargaining agreement expires in 2030, and many believe that it's going to be put into the schedule well before that.
Well, let's open it up and get that renegotiating going, because I turned 65 in 8 years, okay? So I need that little extra bump in my, in that retirement fund.
They're keeping it for themselves.
That's the way they've done it in the past.
Yes, right.
Yeah. Right.
Oh.
There's not going to be any money gifted to us. Give us insurance, keep the money.
Amen.
I don't know what he's thinking about over there. Tom, great stuff. We appreciate it. We'll talk before the Hall of Fame game, okay?
Thanks, Tom.
Perfect. Look forward. See you guys.
There you go. There's Tom Thayer. Does great work.